So the next pillar in our framework is that of engagement. Now, this refers to things you've done to learn more about and interact with the subject you want to study. Ultimately, this pillar is all about trying to show the reader that you're dedicated and committed to the subject. It's to show the reader that you've taken the time to fully consider the decision to study this subject by truly interacting with it. Just like with motivation, we can split engagement into two broad categories. The first is academic engagement and the second is experiential engagement. Let's now take a look at each of these in turn. Academic engagement essentially refers to the things you've done to discover more about the academic side of your subject. For example, this can be things like reading subject-related additional books, research articles, listening to relevant podcasts, or watching educational videos. For medicine, this could be things like reading the student BMJ, reading research articles relevant to current medical topics, or simply just keeping up to date with the medical news. Now, the second broad category within engagement is experiential engagement. And this refers to the things you've done to get to know the realities of the subject. So kind of going beyond the academic side and going more towards dealing with the subject in real life. Examples of this include things like work experiences you've been on, summer camps, taster days, or anything else that's allowed you to interact with the realities of the subject. For medicine, this often involves volunteering long-term at nursing homes and youth centres, as well as work experiences at GPs, hospitals. So now that we've been introduced to engagement, let's now move on to the next lesson where we can see these ideas in action. As you know, this complete personal statement masterclass is completely free for you to watch right here on YouTube. But if you're like me and you prefer this information in the written format, then you might like to check out my ebook by clicking on the link somewhere up here or in the description below. This 100-page book concisely contains everything you'll need to write to your very own personal statement using genuine Oxbridge examples. I've written it to be easy to read and designed it to be easy on the eyes to help you access all the key information in the quickest way possible. And you can use the code ULTIMATE, which will give the first 100 people 50% off the book. On top of that, everyone who buys the book will get 50% off the full personal statement video masterclass, which features 20 extra lessons covering how to structure the personal statement, how to get going, how to cut down, what pitfalls to avoid, and lots of worked examples, all of which will help you craft your very own expert personal statement. Now, back to the lesson. So in the previous lesson, we learnt about the importance of talking about engagement, which can broadly be split up into academic engagement and experiential engagement. In this lesson, we're going to see both of those things in action. Here's an example of academic engagement. My interest in science, particularly human physiology, prompted me to participate in a pre-medical course. As part of this, I published a research paper on the MedLink website on the effects of brain-derived neurotrophic factors, which stimulate neurogenesis within the brain. Now, this is a fantastic demonstration of academic engagement. It really shows that they've gone out of their way to engage with the scientific side of medicine to get to know more about it. And they've also used a specific example which really adds credibility and authenticity. Here's another example of academic engagement in action. Reading biology books kindled my interest in the body's ingenious workings, and health news articles made me aware of topical issues in the medical world. Now, this is a pretty robust sentence that shows the steps that were taken to learn more about medicine. But to be honest, it's a little bit vague. It doesn't actually mention any specific articles, so it's not as genuine and authentic as it could be. So to improve this, it would be much nicer to include a more specific point. But at the same time, it's a pretty safe move because whatever you write in your personal statement will end up being scrutinized and grilled in the interviews. So if you don't commit to a specific book, you can't really be targeted for it. Whereas if you have committed to a specific book and the author of that is the interviewer, you're kind of in a pickle, especially if you haven't actually read it. So that's definitely pros and cons of not mentioning the specifics. However, I'd usually always advise mentioning something specific and making sure that you've actually read and understood that material well. We'll talk more about academic engagement later in the class when we come across the academia pillar. But right now, let's move on and talk about experiential engagement. And here's an example of experiential engagement. This was clear from day one of my 4-week work experience placements at 2 GP surgeries, Royal Derby Hospital and a pharmacy. The most poignant moment was when a patient in the neuro rehabilitation unit hugged and thanked each care team member for their help. 6 months volunteering at Brookfields Nursing Home has honed my ability to care selflessly and compassionately, teaching patients and allowing me to contribute to the community in the long term. Now this is a pretty great demonstration of how you should word your experiential engagement. This shows a clear structure of talking about a work experience, linking it to a specific example and reflecting on it. Now we'll talk more about reflection in the later lessons, but I just wanted to draw your attention to this sentence structure, where you essentially talk about an experience, give a specific example and reflect on it. This is pretty much the structure you should always follow when you're talking about your experiential engagement, things like work experience, volunteering, etc. Now here's another example of this in action. Volunteering on the Lifeline Express, a hospital train in Marina, India, first inspired me to study medicine. The team on the train works voluntarily in unfamiliar conditions. The smile on a man's face when his perforated eardrum was repaired spoke 1,000 words. This again perfectly follows the structure we just spoke about. They talk about the experience, volunteering on the Lifeline Express, then they link it to a specific example, perforated eardrum repair, then they reflect on it. Smile spoke 1,000 words, basically alluding to how rewarding the job was. So to summarize, in your personal statement you should definitely talk about engagement, especially the things you've done to learn more about the academic side of medicine, which comes under academic engagement, and you should also talk about the things you've done to learn more about the realities of medicine, which comes under experiential engagement. Now let's move on to the next pillar in our framework.